Welcome to the Realizations Podcast. I'm Andrea Gordon, your host, and I'm excited to explore the world of real estate with you. In a world where perceptions often overshadow reality, Realizations seeks to redefine what it means to be a realtor. Join me as we peel back the layers of the industry, uncovering inspiring stories and celebrating the good in real estate. Whether you're a homeowner, a fellow realtor, or simply curious, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Realizations, where perceptions meet reality. Let's dive right in. Welcome, everyone, to Realizations, the podcast where we're talking everything real estate. My name is Andrea Gordon. I'm your host, and today I'm very, very happy to have Shawn Kunkler here with me, also from Compass. So hello, Shawn.
Hi there. How are you?
Relatively well. I just taught a class actually in Berkeley. I'm teaching a class on how to be salespeople for the Berkeley office. So 6 sessions of that.
Amazing.
So I figure what happens when you've been doing real estate as long as I have, you start wanting to give back a little bit is sort of
Yeah.
how it goes. I'm so excited to have you here. You're a phenomenally successful real estate agent in San Francisco, and I want to find out all about your journey to becoming a real estate agent. Something I didn't get a chance to say to you before we got started here is that I started the podcast because I got kind of angry about the NAR DOJ lawsuits and the commission lawsuits. And what made me think about doing a podcast was I realized that most people don't know what real estate agents do. There needs to be a lot of education around what our life is like, how we do our business, the number of vendors that we end up dealing with, the ramifications of what we do, the legal aspects of it, how our transactions fuel city coffers. And so for the past year, I've been having everyone from Robert Refkin, the CEO of our company,
Mm.
through to inspectors and plumbers and stagers and designers and city politicians and people talking about the ramifications of real estate, how we all got into real estate, what matters in real estate. Because I feel like if we can educate the public, they might start valuing what it is we do a little bit more and respecting our profession. So that's the point behind the show.
I
Now,
love it.
I understand that you've been in real estate now for 8 years, and you've been doing it at a
Hmm.
very, very high level. And you came out of a background of sales at the Bay Club,
Yeah.
and also had run martial arts studios. So tell me a little bit about your background, who you are.
Sure. I love that whole spirit behind starting this podcast. I think it's much needed. So I certainly appreciate that. But I moved to the Bay Area. I'm originally from Connecticut, and I moved to San Francisco. Gosh, I'm coming up on I think 25-ish years. And when I was about 18, I got the first taste of sales, and I I I loved it. And so I all my jobs in between from then to now, I'm almost 50, um, have all been related to or directly associated with sales or selling. And so when I moved here, my passion at that time was martial arts, and I studied my butt off, really made my name for myself within that school, and then went from um, an assistant program director to program director, and eventually I was running the headquarters school of the Federation.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I acquired a lot of injuries with that, and I thought I was
Aw.
thinking longer term, and I'm like, all right, what can I do to position myself or learn more and kind of evolve to that next step? And that's how I parlayed that into working at high-end athletic clubs. And then through that, I kind of stumbled my way into real estate.
Got it. What martial arts did you practice?
I studied, I feel like I studied everything. What is it? What's the saying? The jack of all trades, master of none.
Uh-huh.
When I was a kid, like fourth grade kid, I studied Taekwondo and then I studied karate in junior high, and then I studied judo in high school, and then I moved out here and I studied primarily Choi Lei Kung Fu, and then Tai Chi
Okay.
Chuan,
Okay.
and then those are the that Kung Fu is the one that I got my earned my black belt in, and then I later went on to study jujitsu, but only made it to very low level, a high level beginner, basically.
Well, but it's super amazing. And there's a philosophy behind martial arts, behind
Mm,
all of them. And many of them, like, I never knew that Taekwondo was actually, well, not Tai Chi, not Taekwondo. Tai Chi is actually a martial art. I had no idea that pushing hands
fascinating.
is actually a martial art. And the
Yeah,
philosophy behind these things and learning strategic moves, how you manipulate someone into getting into a position where you can beat them, I think is very interesting in relationship to sales. When you think about it, there's a
very much.
it's sort of like you're learning how to negotiate with your body, while you're
Yeah,
while you're doing it. Do you think that martial arts played a role in your becoming the stellar salesperson that you are today?
100%. In many, for many reasons. Um, Interestingly enough, I think sports in general
Hmm.
contribute to people's success in life
Hmm. Hmm.
because there's just something about doing a hard activity and losing that teaches you a
Hmm.
lot about the world and how things work. And then when you figure out how to, put in some more practice time, strengthen your weaknesses and get back to it, that's when we evolve. And so all of that's 100% translatable to sales because I mean, you've been doing this for a lot of years and you can't win every sale, but the attitude in which you show up has to be consistent as if you already won. Like you can't walk in defeated or you've already lost.
Right.
That's the same with fighting. If I'm competing with somebody that day in volleyball or martial arts or golf, I can't have thought I've already lost this.
Right.
I have
No,
to
absolutely.
Yeah, I have to have that winner's mindset. And so going into a negotiation or a listing presentation or a consultation with a buyer, I have to know I have to know what I'm bringing to the table. And so 100%, I think it all relates. And then I think the aspect of practice, the discipline to do it when you're tired, when you don't want to, especially
Mhm.
for new agents. It's how, like you and I know, how incredibly important is it to go look at inventory,
Right.
practice your senses, right?
Hmm.
There's just so much you experience from it. So I think so much of it relates, not just again with martial arts. I think with any sport, there's a
Yeah.
direct relation.
I would actually say that I think that there is a direct relationship between real estate and pretty much anything that anyone does with great discipline and
Agreed.
consistency. And
Yeah.
I come from a background of theater, so I still practice theater. I'm a director. I'm a playwright. I
Yeah.
produce. And so for me, I regard oh, by the way, if you hear any little chirping in the background, I have a little dinky bird in my office with me. And and so when we get talking, sometimes he gets talking. I don't know if you can hear him or not.
I did just hear it and I was like, oh, it sounds like you have a window open.
Yeah, no, I have a little dinky bird. His name is Percy. He's a parrotlet. In any case, I do believe that you can take whatever life experience you have as a realtor and apply it to the profession of real estate.
Agreed.
And it will serve you well. One of the things I love about you is that you do refer to being a real estate salesperson. I just taught a class, as I mentioned earlier, in real estate mastery at Compass, and it was very interesting because I asked people to tell me how they regarded themselves, how they identified, and everybody kept coming up with trusted advisor, and I leaned in and I said, "Does being a trusted advisor make you money?" And some people said yes. But everybody forgets about the sales aspect of it. And you love the sales aspect of it. Now, why do you love the sales aspect? What is it about sales that thrills you?
That's a great question. It's not dissimilar from martial arts or again any sport. Is there's if you think about a game of chess, right? And if you and I sat down and played 20 games of chess,
I would win.
you'd probably crush me. One, I'm a horrible chess player, but I would also venture to say that sure, you may do a few moves the same way, but you wouldn't do every move the same way. And
Right.
so there's an infinite way to solve the problem. And so I think what fascinates me about sales and working with clients is the way that I envision it is the client comes to me and they speak a language and I don't know what that language is. And so I have to ask questions and I have to listen and I have to start understanding their language so then I can match mirror my language to their language and then help
Hmm.
communicate whatever it is, whatever problem they're having. I need to communicate the solution for that problem. And so I think
Right.
the thing that fascinates me about this is similar to the chess game analogy. No two clients are going to be the same. No two properties are going to be the same. No negotiation with the agent on the other side is going to be the same. So I think the infinite variables is the
Hmm.
thing that is just incredibly fascinating to me. I think
Hmm.
humans are fascinating, their psychology and philosophy and why they do the things that they're doing. It's one of those things that it fascinates me, and so it pushes me to continue to learn more to do what
Hmm.
I do better.
That's great. That's a great analogy. I love the chess game analogy. It's always going to get played differently. You can study moves specifically whatever way you can, but it doesn't necessarily follow that someone will do it what you expect them to. And what you
Right.
also said about figuring out what it is the client wants by listening, I think that that's a really important thing to bring up is that a lot of people don't listen. A lot of people
True.
a lot of people are so busy thinking about what they're going to say next that they're not hearing what the person is saying to them. And I think for every
Yeah.
realtor, genuinely listening to what it is your client is saying and figuring out if they're being honest with themselves about what they want is a very important thing too. Because sometimes
Yeah.
people will self-censor. They won't think something's possible, so they won't even think it's possible for them to get it, so they don't even bring it up. Or they feel like they ought
True.
to want a particular thing when what actually appeals to them is something completely different. And getting to know them to the point where you
Yeah.
know those things about them is going to make you do better at your job. One of the
Yeah.
things I loved about your podcast, which we'll talk about in a second here with Robert Refkin, was how you got to the heart of a lot of things with him. You were very, very human and very connected and very, it was just a great conversation between two people, which I thought
Oh, thank you.
was a really beautiful thing. What is the name of your podcast?
It's Realtor 180. It's funny listening to why you started yours. Mine is the 180 is how do we turn our businesses around? How do we change the way we're looking or thinking about something? And so I saw my podcast is about 2 years old, and I, similar to you, I just kind of saw patterns with agents, and I saw there's areas that we as a collective community can improve and
Hmm.
lift
Hmm.
each other up. And so that was kind of the spirit of it. Um, and I appreciate what
It
you,
shines through.
thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you shared about Robert's episode. I'm similar to you. I sit down with people with no notes, with no questions, and I really genuinely try to listen to what they're saying, but I also try to hear what they're not saying and then
Hmm.
explore that a little bit more with them so we can go to that deeper place because I think
Hmm.
that's where the goodness of the conversation comes out.
Hmm.
Um, funny, like funnily, I don't know if that's a word.
It
Clearly
is.
my grammar is not the best. But I've tried those episodes. I've had producers say, "All right, come up with a list of questions." And then I came up with a list of questions, but then the problem was I wasn't listening to the answer, and then I
Right.
wasn't organically able to riff. I was just
Hmm.
waiting for my turn to ask the next question. And I was like, that's not me. I can't do that. And so I very quickly got rid of that style.
Right, right. It's interesting to me because in preparing that class that I just taught, I had to come up with, headings for each section that I was working through. And I had the
Yeah.
people in the class have a notebook and write down answers so that they're going to refer back to in later sessions. It reminded, being a theater director, actors, when they're preparing for a role, they have to ask themselves a series of questions. One of them is, who am I?
Mm,
Where am I? What time is it? What do I want? What am I going to do to get what I want? What are the obstacles keeping me from getting what I want? And those are questions
mm,
that I had every realtor ask themselves. And then the next set of questions is ask them about your client. What do they want? What do you have to do to help them to get what they want? What is the obstacle in the way of them getting what they want? These are
yeah.
questions that we ask ourselves every day. I feel like there's a big analogy between a theater production, between the hero's journey in a book like Hero with a Thousand Faces,
Yeah.
between a jujitsu match and when you get to the place where you win it. All of those things, they're analogous in many, many ways.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and one of the things that was interesting for me is that you got to the heart of Robert Refkin and talking with him about his own fears, goals, thoughts, what mattered to him. And in my podcast with him, I got to a very political place with him because that's where I
Mm,
normally go. So you went to a heart and soul place with him, and I went to a political place with him. Um,
mm.
and everybody, the way you express yourself, it always manifests in some way, shape, or form in the way your clientele is, in the way you handle a transaction, in the way your
Sure.
life moves forward in your business. And so I think your clients are in very good hands, obviously, when they're working with you because you are a heart and soul person. So that's a wonderful thing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm a politico. What can I say? So, um, so in working at Compass, is Compass the only real estate company you've worked for?
No, I actually started with Keller Williams as I
Okay.
started on this journey. And then I moved over to Paragon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Paragon was it was funny. It was more like what I was familiar with martial arts schools and
Mm-hmm.
and bay clubs. It was kind of a mix between the two. It was a little bit more boutique, but it was upscale. And so it was a
Right.
really, really good fit. They were exclusive to San Francisco.
Right.
Um, and then they were actually the first San Francisco brokerage to get acquired by Compass. And so that's how
Right.
I parlayed into Compass.
Right. I actually went to UC Santa Barbara with Wendy Storch, whom you probably know from
Oh, wow.
Paragon.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. She was a good friend back in those days. We sort of have we have we're not friends. I'm sure we're friends, but we lost touch after college. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's too
she's
bad.
an amazing artist. She's really phenomenal, actually.
You know, it's fascinating with her, and particularly the way that you can tell she's an artist through and through. The way that she positions her properties,
Hmm.
they tell a story. The way the
Right, right,
staging is, the way the marketing collateral is done, the way the photos are taken. You can,
right.
it's kind of like seeing a piece, a runway piece.
Yeah.
You can see the story. You see an art piece. You can there's you mentioned as an artist or as an actor gets into character. When you see the standalone piece, you can also feel and like step into that experience, even though none of that was directly communicated.
Yeah, and I feel like, again, real estate is one of those professions where you can manifest exactly who you are through the work that you do. So Wendy takes
Sure.
her being an artist into her work. You take your martial arts into your work. I take my theater background into my work.
Yeah.
It
That's what I
actually,
love.
yeah, it's a fascinating, it's a really fascinating part of what it is that we do. Um,
Yeah.
and when you were at Keller Williams and then at Paragon, and then when you came to Compass, what did you perceive to be the differences in the different brokerages, honestly?
Oof. All right. I'm going to dance around this one a little bit.
It's
Um,
okay. You don't have to be politically correct. It's my podcast.
I mean, I think when I first got into the industry, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And doing high level research on a national level, not the
Mhm.
best approach for a place like San Francisco. I was under the interpretation or under the expectation that the Keller Williams would they had all this training and training material, and I thought it would directly relate. Unfortunately, it didn't translate really well with my personal sales style,
Right.
which
Right.
tends to be more advisory and more
Mhm.
um I shared it off air, but it's more membership based. I'm going to see you
Mhm.
again. If I sell a membership, I'm going to see you tomorrow and I'm going to see you next month and I'm going to see you the month after.
Right.
So I have
Right.
to present things in a very authentic and honest way. Otherwise, it's going to be super awkward seeing you
Right.
all the time. And I'm not saying their approach wasn't that. It was just a little bit more direct instead
Mhm.
of being more covert in the communication, if that makes sense.
Makes total
So
sense.
so
Yeah.
I basically then decided I did research, I backed up and I was like, who is the agent I want to be and where do I want to sell? And I wanted
Mhm.
to be more on North Side. I wanted to work with a more affluent client base. I was already familiar with that. I had data like at that as a database. So then in doing research on brokerages, Paragon was head and
Right.
shoulders. And
Right.
so I interviewed and moved my license over to Paragon.
Mhm.
And then um
Got
it was
acquired.
great. And then it got
Mhm.
acquired. And I don't regret like we're autonomous. We can leave at any point. And
Right.
I think my team philosophy is if people who work with me on my team, if I give them enough of what they need so they can leave and go and build an amazing business, but I provide so much value that they never want to leave, that's the ideal situation. And I kind of
Right.
feel like that with Compass. Like
Mhm.
they give you so much tools and support that I can leave, but I don't want to because
Right.
it's easy. And so I stay.
Right. Right. I have the same experience. I flipped around like a pancake to different real estate companies. When I started, I was originally with Century 21 in Daly City.
Mm.
And from there, I went to
Mm.
Ford Real Estate, which eventually became Zephyr in
Yep.
Potrero Hill. And then from there, I went to Century 21 Heritage in Montclair in the East Bay. And
Oh wow.
then I
Okay.
went from there to Red Oak. Then I went from Red Oak to Coldwell Banker. I was there at Coldwell Banker for a very, very long time. And then I went back to Red Oak because a friend of mine bought the company. And
Oh
then
wow.
Compass came a calling, and they had so many tools and so much wonderful stuff that I thought, you know what? I'll go there. And I
Yeah.
feel like you need different things at different points in your life as a realtor. And so, for
Yes.
example, your initial thought to go to Keller Williams was probably a good one because ever since Prudential has not been around, there has been kind of like a dearth of places where you can go as a young agent and get the education that you need. And they've always
Yeah.
presented themselves out in the world as a place where you get a lot of education. I don't necessarily think that that's entirely true. I feel like a
Mhm.
company like Compass gives us unbelievable amounts of education. And also I'm
Yeah.
really a strong believer that as an agent, you are an entrepreneur and that the company that you work for is really, you are their client. not the other way around.
Hmm.
You want to go to a company where they give you everything you possibly need to be as successful as you possibly can be. And for me, I have found that Compass is that place. Um,
Yeah.
all the other places are fine. There's nothing particularly the matter with them. It's just the level of I feel like your manager and the person who runs the company are so utterly important to the tenor and the culture um, and the way in which the company expresses itself out in the world, similar to how you express yourself out in the world and bring every bit of
Yeah.
the experience that you have along with you to the point where you're working with that client. Same thing with the company that you're working for with. Um, their culture is your culture, so there should be a commonality there.
I completely agree. And I love that you shared that, as you evolve, you just need different things.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
in like I can totally see that is you can get to a certain point with certain companies. And that's what I was looking for in my first company is like my thought was the first 6 months are going to be hell. I have no sales, I have no leads, I need to just like hit the ground and I need to go fast. And so who's going to give me everything that I need? And I thought that was the company.
Hmm.
But again, I'm not throwing shade. It's just it
No,
wasn't
I
a
know,
good
I know
fit.
you're not. I know you're not throwing shade. You're just thinking about who am I in relationship to this company? And that's a great thing. And it's also wonderful that you had the self-knowledge that you were able to understand that because a lot of people wouldn't have and would have just stayed there floundering or
Yeah.
not being as successful as they possibly could be. I mean, you mentioned that you have a team. How many people on your team?
I like to keep it lean. I have one ops person who's full
Mhm.
time. I have a marketing person, a transaction coordinator, and then I have Nancy, who is an agent with me in the city. So her and I are the two people producing the sales. Everybody
Right.
else is the support.
That's great. That's great. I have a similar setup. I have Kai and Philip, who are a wonderful
Mhm.
married couple who share my executive assistant position and my listing coordinator position. And I have a TC that I get through my company, and
Mhm.
that's really it. I have certain agents that I've designated, people I refer business to. But
Yeah.
most of the business is basically all the business is generated by me. I'm primarily a listing agent. I probably do, 95% listings and 5% buyers at this point because that's sort of a natural trajectory in terms of the business. When you start out, you do tons and tons of buyers, and then those buyers suddenly have to sell their
Yeah.
house, and then you end up selling their house for them, and they recommend you to their friends, and that's sort of how the listing work starts. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I like that. Some of these mega teams that I don't know how. Basically, if you are running a team with 18 people in it, you are not running a team. You are running a brokerage, as far as I can tell.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Andy Bovender out of the Carolinas, he has a
Mhm.
37 person team. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
I don't know how you do it, man. Like that
Yeah.
sounds, it's incredible, but I just don't even, I don't know if I'm wired like that.
Do you know Kenny Fast or Kenny Trong by any
Yep.
chance?
Yep.
He
Yeah.
has 300 people working for him.
That's a
That is
brokerage.
that is a brokerage. That is not a
That
team.
is a good sized brokerage too, by the way.
Yeah, truly, truly is. So it's a whole different attitude around, what the work is and how you're going to manifest it. I like the human interaction too much to get to the point where I'm not down, out in the field doing things myself. And I think when you get to run a
Yeah.
team that large, you're not really doing that anymore. So I love actually being part of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's every time you make a shift in your business, the your job, if you will, changes.
Right.
And like the things that you're responsible for. Yeah, and I feel like that's a constant battle with me. I have to actually put blocks on my calendar of like, hey, this is when I work with clients. Like I'm not taking any
Time,
projects on
time
right now.
time blocking is really important. It's good. It also allows you to have some kind of work-life balance. How do you
Yeah.
maintain a work-life balance?
I think that's a farce. I I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I think that whole work-life balance is it was an interesting branding exercise. I don't think we're in balance ever. Like I think life is about imbalance, and I think I think it ebbs and flows and it goes back and forth. There's night and day, that's just the nature of the beast. But if you look at you look at your life is if you're really passionate about something and you really find joy in it, why do you want to take a break from it? Just
I'm right there with you. I never go on vacation. I hate traveling. I love working. It's my favorite thing. I'm happiest when I'm working. And
it's kind of on the flip. It's almost maddening for me to do nothing. It is maddening for me. I'm constantly, I mean, I was a year into the business. So I was a year into the business. I switched to Paragon. At Paragon, my first San Francisco sale was for like 2.6 million. And then I decided to take that money and I was like, I'm going to write a book, The Insider's Guide to Home Buying. And
right.
so like I'm the type of person who will just I will set crazy goals and I just go for it. But that
Mhm.
keeps me engaged. So I don't have a lot of balance. But the way that I find the time to do these projects is like you mentioned, I had a podcast. I'm working right now on filming a 4-part class for Compass Academy.
Mhm.
Um, I have a mastermind group that I run. I just do these things on schedule. So I
Right.
record on Fridays, for example,
Right.
and I have 2 recording slots, and that whole process is automated. And
Mhm.
so the my time commitment is Friday, and then on like this week, for example, I have a couple time blocks to work on the locations for the recording session for the class and finish the script and set that up. And so I work very closely with Kat, my ops manager, who knows that if I touch my calendar, I'm gonna muck up the whole thing. So she's in charge of it. And she's amazing at like, hey, you should, I'm gonna block this time because I know you've been busy and I know you need to catch up. Um, and so I don't have a direct answer, but I think it's having the right people around you, but then also just living and dying by my calendar is how I am able to do
I'm
it.
there. I'm right there with you. And I realized that when I was talking about my team, was remiss and did not mention my virtual assistant. I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines named Teresa, and she is incredible. And she's the one who makes sure my CRM is up to date, that my calendar is up to date, that all the sort of rote things that always need to get
Yeah.
done are done. And she's impeccable. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure you have that kind of a team around you. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. How, if people want to find you in San Francisco, where can they find you? What's your email and what's your phone number?
Good question. The easiest is just if you Google my name, or Homeward Associates. I don't know my business number, so I won't give that, but it's Shawn, SHAWN, at homewardassociates.com. Or they can find me through Realtor.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on the show today. This was actually very enlightening for you real estate agents out there who were watching this. This is how top producers think and work and create the world around them. And I really appreciate Shawn taking the time to meet with us today. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Realizations Podcast. I hope our conversation has shed light on the true essence of real estate and the people behind it. As we wrap up, I want to extend my gratitude to our listeners for their support and engagement. Your feedback drives the heart of this podcast, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the Realizations Podcast and leaving a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our message of positivity in the real estate industry. Until next time, remember to keep an open mind, embrace empathy, and always seek the good in every situation. I'm Andrea Gordon signing off from Realizations. See you next time.